The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Ashworth Palace as Princess Elena made her way through the ornate corridors toward the breakfast room. At 15, she possessed the same striking auburn hair as her father, King Alexander, and the keen intelligence that had made the House of Ashworth legendary throughout the kingdom of Valdoria. Today felt different somehow, though she couldn't quite place why. The palace had been unusually quiet over the past few weeks. Whispered conversations stopped abruptly when she entered rooms, and the staff seemed more nervous than usual. Even her governess, Miss Adelaide, had been acting strangely, often glancing toward the windows as if expecting something or someone to arrive unexpectedly. As Elena approached the breakfast room, she could hear heated voices coming from within. She recognized her father's deep, authoritative tone immediately, but there was an edge to it that she rarely heard. The other voice belonged to Lady Cordelia, her stepmother, who had married King Alexander 3 years earlier, after Elena's mother had passed away in a tragic riding accident. Elena paused outside the partially open door, not intentionally eavesdropping but unable to help overhearing the conversation that was clearly not meant for her ears.
"You cannot continue this charade, Cordelia," King Alexander was saying, his voice tight with controlled anger. "The letters have been discovered."
"Captain Morrison found them in your private study last night." Lady Cordelia's response came in sharp, clipped tones that Elena had never heard from her stepmother before.
"You have no right to go through my personal belongings, Alexander. Those letters are private correspondence. Nothing more."
"Private correspondence with Lord Blackwood?" The king's voice rose slightly. "The same Lord Blackwood who has been spreading rumors about Elena's legitimacy to the throne? The same man who has been questioning the circumstances of Victoria's death?" Elena's breath caught in her throat. Her mother, Queen Victoria, had died when her horse had been spooked during what should have been a routine morning ride. The official report had concluded it was a tragic accident, but Elena had always wondered why her mother, an experienced rider, would have taken such risks on a path she knew well. Lady Cordelia's voice became defensive. "Blackwood has legitimate concerns about the future of this kingdom. Elena is young and inexperienced. Perhaps it would be better if someone with more political acumen were to guide the transition of power. Someone like you?" King Alexander's tone had become dangerously quiet. "Did you really think I wouldn't discover your meetings with the opposition? Your secret correspondence about undermining my daughter's claim to the throne?" Elena pressed herself closer to the wall, her heart pounding. She had always sensed that Lady Cordelia's affection for her was somewhat forced, but this conversation was revealing something far more sinister than simple stepmother-stepdaughter tension. "Elena is not suited to rule," Lady Cordelia continued, seemingly unaware of how her words were carrying through the palace corridors. "She's too idealistic, too trusting. This kingdom needs strong leadership, not a naive girl who believes in fairy tale notions of justice and equality. That naive girl, as you call her, is my daughter and the rightful heir to this throne," King Alexander replied firmly. "And those fairy tale notions you mock are exactly what this kingdom needs. Elena has shown more wisdom and compassion in her 15 years than you have in your entire political career." There was a moment of silence, and Elena could imagine Lady Cordelia's carefully composed mask slipping for just a moment. When her stepmother spoke again, her voice had taken on a tone that sent chills down Elena's spine. "Accidents happen, Alexander. Victoria learned that lesson well. Perhaps it's time Elena learned it too." The implication hung in the air like a physical presence. Elena's hands trembled as she realized what Lady Cordelia was suggesting. The woman she had tried so hard to accept as a mother figure was not only plotting against her claim to the throne, but was also implying that her mother's death had been no accident. King Alexander's response was immediate and filled with barely contained fury. "Are you threatening my daughter, Cordelia? Are you confessing to murdering my wife?" "I'm simply stating facts about the fragility of life and the importance of making wise decisions," Lady Cordelia replied coolly. "Sometimes the greater good requires difficult choices." Elena had heard enough. She turned and ran as quietly as she could through the corridors, her mind reeling from what she had discovered. The woman who had shared their family dinners, who had attended her birthday celebrations, who had pretended to care about her education and future, was revealed as something far more dangerous than Elena had ever imagined. Finding herself in the palace gardens, Elena sat heavily on a stone bench beneath her mother's favorite rose arbor. The morning air was crisp, and the roses were in full bloom. their fragrance filling the space with sweetness that seemed to mock the darkness of what she had just learned. Captain Morrison, the head of the Royal Guard, appeared at the garden entrance. He was a tall, stern man who had served her family faithfully for over 20 years. His usually composed expression was troubled as he approached her. "Your Highness," he said, bowing slightly. "I was looking for you. There are some matters we need to discuss urgently." Elena looked up at him, seeing something in his weathered features that confirmed her worst fears. "You found the letters, didn't you, Captain? The ones my father was talking about." Captain Morrison's expression grew even more serious. "You overheard the conversation with Lady Cordelia." "It wasn't a question." Elena nodded, unable to trust her voice for a moment. When she finally spoke, her words came out in a rush. "She killed my mother, didn't she? And now she's planning to do something to me." The captain sat down on the bench beside her, abandoning the formal protocols that usually governed their interactions. "Princess Elena, what I'm about to tell you must remain between us until we can ensure your safety. The letters we discovered contain detailed plans for undermining your claim to the throne. But more importantly, they contain evidence that suggests Lady Cordelia has been working with Lord Blackwood and several other nobles to orchestrate a change in succession." "But what about my mother?" Elena pressed, needing to know the truth despite how much it might hurt. Captain Morrison was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing his words carefully. "The letters reference your mother's death in ways that suggest it was not the accident we were led to believe. There are mentions of removing obstacles and clearing the path that are deeply concerning when viewed in the context of recent events." Elena felt as though the ground beneath her feet had shifted permanently. Everything she had believed about her family, her safety, and her future had been built on lies and manipulation. The woman who had comforted her during her grief, who had helped plan her education, who had insisted on being present at all important royal functions, had been systematically working to destroy everything Elena's mother had died to protect. "What do we do now?" Elena asked, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Captain Morrison stood and extended his hand to help her up from the bench. "Now, Your Highness, we make sure that Lady Cordelia's plot is exposed before she can do any more damage to you or to this kingdom." The next few days passed in a carefully orchestrated dance of normalcy. Elena attended her usual lessons, took her customary walks in the gardens, and joined the family for meals, all while knowing that the woman sitting across from her had murdered her mother and was planning to eliminate her as well. The strain of maintaining this facade was exhausting, but Captain Morrison had impressed upon her the importance of not alerting Lady Cordelia to their discovery. During this time, Captain Morrison and his most trusted guards had been conducting a discreet investigation into Lady Cordelia's activities over the past 3 years. What they discovered painted a picture of manipulation and treachery that went far deeper than anyone had initially suspected. The letters found in Lady Cordelia's study revealed a network of conspirators that included not only Lord Blackwood, but also several influential nobles, foreign diplomats, and even some members of the palace staff. The plot was sophisticated and far-reaching, designed to gradually erode confidence in Elena's ability to rule while positioning Lady Cordelia as a more suitable alternative. Most disturbing were the references to Queen Victoria's death that suggested it had been carefully planned and executed. The letters mentioned the morning ride solution and praised Lady Cordelia for her creativity in removing the primary obstacle. There were also detailed discussions about the timing of Lady Cordelia's marriage to King Alexander, which had occurred with suspicious speed after an appropriate mourning period. Elena learned all of this during clandestine meetings with Captain Morrison in the palace's old library, a room that was rarely used and could be easily monitored for unwanted listeners. The captain had also brought in Lady Margaret, Elena's former nanny, and one of the few people in the palace whose loyalty was absolutely unquestionable. "The evidence is substantial, Your Highness," Captain Morrison explained during one of these meetings. "But we need to be strategic about how we proceed. Lady Cordelia has been careful to maintain plausible deniability in most of her correspondence. Much of what we've found could be explained away as legitimate political discussion if presented incorrectly. Lady Margaret, a woman in her 60s who had helped raise Elena from birth, was visibly shaken by the revelations. I always felt something was wrong about how quickly Lady Cordelia integrated herself into the royal household after Queen Victoria's death. She knew too much about palace protocols, too much about the king's habits and preferences.
It was as if she had been studying us for months before the Queen's accident. This observation led to another disturbing discovery. When Captain Morrison investigated Lady Cordelia's background more thoroughly, he found that she had been present at several court functions in the months leading up to Queen Victoria's death, despite having no official reason to be there. She had attended as a guest of various nobles, always with different explanations for her presence, but the pattern suggested a level of surveillance and preparation that was deeply troubling. She was studying us, Elena realized during one of their meetings. She was learning our routines, our weaknesses, our relationships. My mother's death wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was the culmination of months of planning. The evidence also revealed that Lady Cordelia had been systematically working to isolate Elena from potential allies within the court. Several of Elena's tutors had been replaced over the past 2 years, always with Lady Cordelia's recommendation, and always with educators who emphasized Elena's youth and inexperience rather than developing her natural leadership abilities. More concerning was the discovery that Lady Cordelia had been meeting regularly with foreign diplomats, particularly representatives from the neighboring kingdom of Astoria, which had historic claims to portions of Valdoria's territory. The letter suggested that these meetings involved discussions about territorial concessions and trade agreements that would significantly weaken Valdoria's sovereignty. "She's not just trying to prevent you from ruling," Captain Morrison explained grimly. "She's trying to position herself to essentially sell off pieces of our kingdom to foreign powers. The plot goes far beyond personal ambition. It's nothing short of treason." Elena felt the weight of this knowledge settling on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. At 15, she was being forced to confront not only the murder of her mother, but also a conspiracy that threatened the very foundations of her kingdom. Yet, alongside the fear and grief, she felt something else growing within her. A cold, determined anger that surprised her with its intensity. "We need more than letters and circumstantial evidence," Elena said during one of their planning sessions. "We need to catch Lady Cordelia in the act of treason, with witnesses who cannot be dismissed or intimidated." Lady Margaret looked at her former charge with something approaching awe. "Your Highness, what you're suggesting is extremely dangerous. If Lady Cordelia suspects that we know about her activities, she might decide to accelerate her timeline." Elena met her old nanny's gaze steadily. "She's already decided to kill me, Lady Margaret. Waiting won't make that threat go away. It will only give her more time to perfect her plans. We need to force her hand and expose her in a way that makes denial impossible." Captain Morrison had been quiet during this exchange, but now he leaned forward with interest. "What did you have in mind, Your Highness?" Elena had been thinking about this for days, considering various approaches and their potential risks and benefits. "Lady Cordelia believes I'm naive and trusting. She thinks I have no idea about her true nature or her plans. What if we use that assumption against her?" The plan that Elena outlined was indeed dangerous, but it was also elegantly simple. They would arrange for Elena to appear vulnerable and isolated, creating an opportunity for Lady Cordelia to make a move that would expose her intentions in front of reliable witnesses. The key would be timing and positioning. They needed to give Lady Cordelia enough rope to hang herself without actually putting Elena in mortal danger. "The annual Harvest Festival is in 1 week," Elena continued. "There will be hundreds of people at the palace, including foreign dignitaries and representatives from all the major noble houses. If we can expose Lady Cordelia's plot during the festival, in front of all those witnesses, it will be impossible for her to deny or cover up her actions." Captain Morrison considered this carefully. "The festival would indeed provide cover for our preparations and ensure maximum exposure for Lady Cordelia's exposure. But, Your Highness, once we set this plan in motion, there will be no turning back. Lady Cordelia is clearly intelligent and ruthless. If she realizes what we're doing, the consequences could be fatal." Elena stood and walked to the library window, looking out at the gardens where her mother used to walk every morning before that final, fatal ride. When she turned back to face Captain Morrison and Lady Margaret, her expression was resolved and mature beyond her years. "Captain Morrison, Lady Margaret, my mother died because she trusted the wrong person and was unprepared for the depth of evil that person represented. I will not make the same mistake. Lady Cordelia has taken everything from me. My mother, my sense of security, my ability to trust. She intends to take my life and my kingdom as well. I refuse to let her succeed." The room fell silent as the weight of Elena's words settled over them. In that moment, both Captain Morrison and Lady Margaret realized that the naive girl Lady Cordelia had dismissively referred to was gone forever, replaced by someone who would prove to be far more formidable than anyone had anticipated. The week leading up to the Harvest Festival passed with agonizing slowness as Elena, Captain Morrison, and their small circle of trusted allies finalized their plans. The festival was one of Valdoria's most important annual celebrations, traditionally marking not only the end of the harvest season, but also serving as a demonstration of the royal family's connection to the people and the land. This year's festival would be particularly significant because it would be Elena's first time taking a leading role in the ceremonies, symbolically preparing for her eventual ascension to the throne. Lady Cordelia had been instrumental in planning Elena's participation, insisting on elaborate presentations and speeches that would showcase Elena's importance to the kingdom's future. What Lady Cordelia didn't realize was that this very prominence would make any attempt on Elena's life impossible to ignore or cover up. Captain Morrison had spent the week carefully positioning his most loyal guards throughout the palace and festival grounds. Each man had been personally selected for his unwavering loyalty to the royal family and his ability to blend seamlessly into the background until needed. The plan required them to be close enough to intervene if Elena was truly threatened, but distant enough that Lady Cordelia would feel confident enough to act. Lady Margaret had taken on the delicate task of identifying which members of the palace staff could be trusted and which might be compromised by Lady Cordelia's influence. This investigation revealed that the corruption went deeper than anyone had suspected, with several key servants having been replaced over the past 2 years with individuals whose loyalty lay elsewhere. Most shocking was the discovery that Elena's personal maid, Sarah, who had been with the family for less than a year, was reporting Elena's daily activities and conversations directly to Lady Cordelia. This betrayal stung particularly deeply because Elena had grown genuinely fond of Sarah and had often confided in her about her struggles with adjusting to life with a stepmother. "How do we handle Sarah?" Elena asked during one of their secret planning sessions. "If we dismiss her suddenly, Lady Cordelia will know something has changed." "But I can't continue having someone spy on me every day." Captain Morrison had considered this problem as well. "We use her, Your Highness. We feed her information that we want Lady Cordelia to have, information that will convince her that our trap is actually an opportunity. The information they decided to feed Lady Cordelia through Sarah was carefully crafted to be believable while serving their purposes." Elena would express frustration with her father's overprotectiveness and desire to prove her independence by taking more risks. She would mention feeling isolated and vulnerable, particularly during the large crowds and chaos of the festival. Most importantly, she would let slip that she planned to slip away from her assigned guards during the evening celebration to have a private conversation with a young nobleman who had been courting her. This last detail was designed to be irresistible to Lady Cordelia. If Elena was going to be alone and vulnerable during the festival, it would represent the perfect opportunity for an accident that could be blamed on the crowds, the darkness, or the general confusion of the celebration. The young nobleman in question, Lord Christopher Whitmore, was completely trustworthy and had been carefully briefed on his role in the plan. He was genuinely fond of Elena and had agreed to help despite the risks involved. His participation added credibility to the story while ensuring that Elena would have additional protection during the most dangerous part of their operation. As the festival day approached, Elena found herself having to maintain multiple layers of deception. To the general palace staff and most of the court, she had to appear excited and slightly nervous about her increased responsibilities during the festival. To Lady Cordelia, she had to seem naive and trusting while also appearing frustrated with her father's restrictions. To Sarah, she had to confide her supposed plans for romantic escapades while making them seem spontaneous and secret. The most difficult aspect of this preparation was continuing to interact normally with Lady Cordelia herself. Elena had to sit across from her stepmother at meals, listen to her advice about the festival preparations, and accept her help with selecting appropriate jewelry and clothing for the various ceremonies. Every smile, every expression of gratitude, every moment of apparent affection felt like a betrayal of her mother's memory. During one particularly difficult evening, Lady Cordelia insisted on helping Elena practice her speech for the opening ceremony. They sat together in Elena's private study, with Lady Cordelia offering suggestions for improving Elena's delivery and presence. "Remember, darling," Lady Cordelia said, her voice warm with apparent maternal concern. "You are representing not just yourself, but the entire royal line. The people need to see strength and confidence even if you don't feel it inside." Elena nodded and continued practicing, all while thinking about how Lady Cordelia was simultaneously plotting her death. The woman's ability to maintain such a convincing facade was both impressive and terrifying. It made Elena wonder how many other people she had deceived over the years, and what other crimes she might have committed that had never been discovered. "You've grown so much since I married your father," Lady Cordelia continued, adjusting the drape of Elena's ceremonial cloak. "I sometimes think Victoria would be proud of the young woman you've become." The casual mention of her mother's name, spoken with such apparent affection by the woman who had murdered her, nearly broke Elena's composure. She had to excuse herself to the washroom to regain her emotional equilibrium before continuing with the rehearsal. That night, Elena lay awake thinking about the complex psychology of someone who could commit such acts while maintaining such convincing displays of love and concern. She realized that Lady Cordelia's greatest weapon was not her intelligence or her political connections, but her ability to make people trust her completely while she systematically betrayed that trust. The morning of the festival dawned clear and bright, with the kind of crisp autumn air that made every color seem more vivid and every sound carry farther than usual. Elena woke early and spent time in her mother's garden, gathering strength from the roses that still bloomed there and thinking about what the day might bring. Captain Morrison arrived as she was finishing her morning walk, his expression serious but determined. "Are you ready for this, Your Highness?" Elena looked at him steadily, feeling older and wiser than her 15 years should have allowed. "I've been ready since the moment I realized what Lady Cordelia had done to my mother. Today we honor my mother's memory by ensuring that her killer faces justice." As they walked back toward the palace together, Elena could see servants and staff bustling about with final preparations for the festival. The great hall was being decorated with harvest flowers and autumn leaves. Long tables were being set up for the feast, and musicians were already practicing in the courtyard. In a few hours, hundreds of people would fill the palace and its grounds, celebrating the prosperity of the kingdom and the promise of the future. What they wouldn't realize was that they were also about to witness the exposure of a conspiracy that had threatened to destroy everything they were celebrating. Elena took a deep breath and prepared to face the most dangerous day of her life. The harvest festival began with the traditional sunrise ceremony in the palace courtyard, where Elena stood beside her father and Lady Cordelia to officially welcome the celebration. Hundreds of nobles, foreign dignitaries, and common citizens filled the space, their faces turned toward the royal family with expressions of respect and anticipation. Elena played her role perfectly, delivering her prepared speech with confidence while scanning the crowd for the familiar faces of Captain Morrison's strategically placed guards. She also noted the presence of Lord Blackwood and several other nobles who, according to the intercepted letters, were part of Lady Cordelia's conspiracy. Their presence would be crucial when the time came to expose the full scope of the plot. Throughout the morning ceremonies, Elena was acutely aware of Lady Cordelia's watchful presence beside her. Her stepmother smiled and nodded appropriately during the various presentations and speeches, but Elena could sense an underlying tension in her posture that suggested she was thinking about more than just the festival activities. The first test of their plan came during the midday feast, when Elena made a point of appearing restless and confined by the formal protocols. She fidgeted with her jewelry, looked longingly toward the gardens where other young people were enjoying more relaxed celebrations, and made several comments about wishing she could participate in the festival like a normal person rather than sitting at the high table. "Father," she said during a brief lull in the conversations around them, "must I remain here for the entire afternoon? The weather is so beautiful, and I feel as though I'm missing the real celebration." King Alexander, who had been briefed on the plan, played his role as the overprotective father perfectly. "Elena, you know how important it is for you to be present for these official functions. Your position requires certain sacrifices." "But surely I could walk in the gardens for a few minutes," Elena persisted, letting a note of petulance creep into her voice. "Lady Cordelia, you understand how difficult it is to sit still for so many hours, don't you?" Lady Cordelia's response was carefully measured, but Elena caught the quick flash of interest in her stepmother's eyes. "Perhaps after the afternoon presentations, dear, there will be time for more informal activities during the evening celebration." This exchange was exactly what they had hoped for. Elena was establishing her desire for freedom and independence, while Lady Cordelia was beginning to see opportunities in that desire. As the afternoon progressed, Elena continued to build the foundation for her eventual escape plan. She mentioned to several people, always within earshot of Lady Cordelia or her allies, that she was looking forward to the evening dancing and hoped to have some time away from the formal ceremonies. She also made a point of interacting warmly with Lord Christopher, ensuring that their apparent romantic connection would be noticed and remembered. The most crucial moment came during the late afternoon, when Elena was preparing for the evening festivities in her chambers with Sarah's assistance. This was when she would plant the final pieces of information that would convince Lady Cordelia to act. "Sarah," Elena said as her maid helped her change into her evening gown, "I need to tell you something in confidence." Sarah looked up with apparent concern and genuine affection. Even knowing that the woman was reporting to Lady Cordelia, Elena found it difficult to believe that someone who seemed so caring could be part of such a sinister plot. "Of course, Your Highness. You know you can trust me with anything." The irony of those words was almost overwhelming, but Elena pushed forward with her performance. "Lord Christopher has asked me to meet him privately during the evening celebration. He wants to discuss something important. I think he might be planning to ask my father for permission to court me officially." Sarah's face lit up with what appeared to be genuine happiness. "Oh, Your Highness, how romantic! When are you planning to meet him?" "During the dancing, after the formal presentations are finished," Elena explained, allowing excitement to color her voice. "He suggested we meet in the rose garden near my mother's memorial bench. It's quiet there, and we could have a real conversation without all the ceremony and protocol." "But Your Highness," Sarah said with apparent concern, "won't Captain Morrison and your guards be concerned if you leave the celebration without telling them?" Elena smiled conspiratorially. "That's exactly why I'm telling you this in confidence. I plan to slip away quietly, just for a few minutes. I'm tired of being watched and protected every moment of every day. For once, I want to feel like a normal girl having a normal conversation with a young man who might care for me." Sarah nodded understandingly, but Elena could see her mind working, cataloging every detail of the conversation for her later report to Lady Cordelia. "When exactly are you planning to leave?" Sarah asked, apparently innocently. "Probably around 9 o'clock when the dancing is at its peak and there are so many people moving about that my absence won't be noticed immediately," Elena replied. "Lord Christopher said he would wait for me by the fountain until I could get away." This conversation accomplished everything Elena had hoped. Lady Cordelia would now know exactly when and where Elena would be vulnerable, and she would have enough time to make whatever preparations were necessary for her plan, while believing that Elena was completely unaware of any danger. The evening celebration began with traditional folk dancing in the Great Hall, followed by more formal presentations and speeches celebrating the harvest and the kingdom's prosperity. Elena participated in all the required activities, dancing with appropriate partners and accepting congratulations on her performance throughout the day. As 9 o'clock approached, Elena began her carefully choreographed exit. She complained of feeling warm and stepped onto one of the terraces for fresh air. From there, she made her way gradually toward the rose garden, pausing frequently to speak with other guests and ensuring that her movements appeared casual and unplanned. Captain Morrison and his guards were positioned throughout the garden and surrounding areas, invisible but ready to intervene at the first sign of danger. Lord Christopher was already waiting near the fountain, exactly as Elena had told Sarah he would be. But most importantly, Elena could sense that she was being followed. Lady Cordelia had taken the bait. As Elena made her way deeper into the garden, toward the secluded area where her mother's memorial bench sat surrounded by the roses that Queen Victoria had loved so much, she felt her heart beating faster with anticipation and fear. In a few minutes, she would finally have the confrontation that would determine the future of her kingdom and her life. Behind her, moving carefully through the shadows, Lady Cordelia, prepared to strike the rose garden, was bathed in moonlight and the soft glow from the palace windows, creating patterns of light and shadow among the flowering bushes and stone pathways. Elena approached her mother's memorial bench with measured steps, every sense alert for any sign of Lady Cordelia's approach. Lord Christopher was waiting exactly where he was supposed to be, though his usually confident demeanor showed signs of the tension they were all feeling. As Elena joined him, they began a quiet conversation that would appear romantic to any observer, but was actually a careful coordination of their final preparations. "Can you see Captain Morrison's men?" Elena asked quietly, pretending to admire the moonlit roses. 3 positioned along the main path, 2 more near the palace entrance to this section, Christopher confirmed, leaning closer as if sharing an intimate comment. Princess, are you certain you want to proceed? Once Lady Cordelia commits to action, there will be no protecting you from the knowledge of what she's truly capable of. Elena's response was interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps on the garden path. Lady Cordelia emerged from the shadows, moving with the confident grace that Elena had admired since childhood, now revealed as the practiced stealth of a predator. "Elena, darling," Lady Cordelia called softly, her voice carrying just the right note of maternal concern. "I was worried when I noticed you'd left the celebration. Is everything all right?" Elena turned toward her stepmother with what she hoped appeared to be surprise tinged with guilt. "Lady Cordelia!" I just needed some fresh air." The hall was so warm and crowded. Lady Cordelia's gaze moved to Lord Christopher, and Elena could see her quickly calculating this unexpected complication. Christopher bowed appropriately and made as if to leave, but Lady Cordelia stopped him with a gesture. "Please don't leave on my account, Lord Christopher. I'm sure Elena appreciates your company." Lady Cordelia's smile was perfectly calibrated, but Elena could see something predatory in her stepmother's eyes that she had never noticed before. "Actually," Lady Cordelia continued, moving closer to the bench where Elena was standing, "I'm glad I found you both here." "Elena, there's something important I need to discuss with you. Something about your future that can't wait any longer." Elena felt her pulse quicken, but she forced herself to appear curious rather than alarmed. "What is it, Lady Cordelia? You seem quite serious." Lady Cordelia reached into the small purse she carried, and Elena tensed, ready to signal Captain Morrison's guards if her stepmother produced a weapon. Instead, Lady Cordelia withdrew what appeared to be a small vial of clear liquid. "My dear Elena," Lady Cordelia said, her voice taking on a tone of false regret, "I'm afraid your father and I have come to a difficult decision about your readiness to inherit the throne. The events of recent months have shown us that perhaps you need more time to mature before taking on such responsibilities." Elena stared at the vial, understanding immediately what Lady Cordelia intended. "What are you talking about? What is that?" "This," Lady Cordelia said, holding up the vial so that it caught the moonlight, "is a solution to a problem that has become increasingly clear to those of us who truly care about this kingdom's welfare. You see, Elena, sometimes personal sacrifices must be made for the greater good." Lord Christopher stepped forward protectively, but Lady Cordelia raised her free hand in a gesture that somehow managed to be both threatening and dismissive. "Lord Christopher, I suggest you leave us to discuss family matters privately. This conversation does not concern you, and it would be unfortunate if you became inadvertently involved in something that could affect your own family's standing in the kingdom." But Christopher held his ground, moving to stand directly beside Elena. "I'm afraid I cannot leave Princess Elena alone with someone who is clearly threatening her safety." Lady Cordelia's mask finally slipped completely, revealing the cold calculation that Elena had sensed but never fully recognized. "How unfortunate. I had hoped to spare you from this unpleasantness, but you've made that impossible." Elena realized that the moment of truth had arrived. "Lady Cordelia, before you do whatever you're planning to do, I think you should know that your plans have been discovered." Lady Cordelia's expression didn't change, but Elena could see her reassessing the situation rapidly. "I'm not sure what you mean, darling. I'm simply trying to help you understand some difficult realities about your position." "The letters," Elena said quietly. "We found the letters you've been exchanging with Lord Blackwood and the others. We know about your meetings with the Astorian diplomats. We know what you did to my mother." For a moment, the garden was completely silent except for the distant sounds of celebration from the palace. Lady Cordelia studied Elena's face intently, as if trying to determine whether she was bluffing or if her careful plans had truly been discovered. "Even if that were true," Lady Cordelia said finally, "it changes nothing about tonight's outcome. You see, Elena, I've spent 3 years positioning myself perfectly for this moment. Your father trusts me completely. The court sees me as your devoted stepmother, and your tragic death tonight will be viewed as a terrible accident that occurred during your rebellious attempt to escape your protective guards." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. You're going to claim I was trying to run away? Lady Cordelia smiled with genuine warmth for the first time that evening, as if she were proud of her cleverness. A young princess, frustrated with her restrictions, meets secretly with a young nobleman and attempts to escape the palace for a romantic adventure. Tragically, in her inexperience and excitement, she accepts a drink that has been poisoned by foreign agents who want to destabilize the kingdom. By the time her body is discovered, Lord Christopher will also be found dead, having heroically attempted to save her but arriving too late. The plan was diabolical in its simplicity and believability. Elena could see how easily it could be accepted by everyone from her father to the common people, especially with Lady Cordelia there to provide grief-stricken testimony about Elena's recent rebellious behavior and her concerns about Christopher's influence on the impressionable young princess. But why? Elena asked, genuinely needing to understand the motivation behind such elaborate evil. Why kill my mother? Why destroy our family? What could possibly be worth all of this? Lady Cordelia's expression became almost philosophical. Power, Elena. Real power, not the ceremonial authority of a constitutional monarchy, but the ability to shape a kingdom's destiny according to one's own vision. Your mother was an obstacle to that vision, just as you are now. And my father? Your father will be devastated by grief, naturally. He'll need someone strong and experienced to help him through his loss and guide him in making important decisions about the kingdom's future. Eventually, he may find it necessary to remarry someone who can provide the kind of political acumen that this kingdom truly needs. The scope of Lady Cordelia's ambition was breathtaking. She had systematically eliminated or planned to eliminate everyone who stood between her and effective control of the kingdom, all while maintaining the appearance of a loving, supportive family member. Elena looked at the woman who had murdered her mother and was now preparing to murder her, and felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. Lady Cordelia, before you proceed with your plan, there's one more thing you should know. What's that, darling? Elena smiled, and for the first time that evening, her expression was completely genuine. We've been recording this entire conversation. Lady Cordelia's composure finally cracked as Captain Morrison and 6 of his most trusted guards emerged from their concealment among the rose bushes, surrounding her completely. In the hands of one of the guards was a device that had captured every word of Lady Cordelia's confession, including her admission to murdering Queen Victoria, and her detailed plan for killing Elena and Christopher. Lady Cordelia, Captain Morrison announced formally, by order of King Alexander, and as witnessed by Lord Christopher Whitmore and Princess Elena, you are under arrest for high treason, conspiracy against the crown, and the murder of Queen Victoria. As the guards moved to restrain her, Lady Cordelia looked directly at Elena with something that might have been respect. You're much more intelligent than I gave you credit for, Elena. Perhaps you might have been a worthy ruler after all. Elena met her stepmother's gaze steadily. I learned from watching you, Lady Cordelia. You taught me that sometimes the people closest to us are the most dangerous, and that real strength comes from being able to recognize and confront evil, even when it wears a loving face. As Lady Cordelia was escorted back toward the palace, Elena remained in the rose garden for several more minutes, standing beside her mother's memorial bench and thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Lord Christopher stayed beside her, offering silent support as she processed the end of the nightmare that had dominated her life for 3 years. The sounds of celebration still drifted from the palace, where hundreds of people continued to enjoy the harvest festival, unaware that they had just witnessed the salvation of their kingdom. Tomorrow there would be trials and investigations, political consequences, and diplomatic complications. Tonight, however, Elena simply stood among her mother's roses and felt, for the first time since her mother's death, that justice might actually be possible. When she finally returned to the palace, she found her father waiting for her in his study, his face showing the strain of the evening's revelations but also relief that his daughter was safe. Elena, King Alexander said as she entered the room, I owe you an apology. I should have seen what Lady Cordelia was capable of. I should have protected you better. Elena walked to her father and embraced him, feeling like a daughter again rather than a political target. Father, Lady Cordelia fooled all of us. Her greatest weapon was our willingness to trust and love her. That's not a weakness. It's what makes us different from people like her. As they held each other, both grieving for Queen Victoria and celebrating Elena's survival, They began the long process of healing from the betrayal that had nearly destroyed their family and their kingdom. In the months that followed, Lady Cordelia's trial would reveal the full extent of her conspiracy, leading to the arrest of several other nobles and the exposure of foreign plots against Valdoria's sovereignty. Elena would step into her role as heir with new wisdom and determination, shaped by her experience but not broken by it. But on this night, in the quiet of her father's study, Elena was simply a 15-year-old girl who had survived something terrible and was finally, truly safe.